Good evening, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council on January 20th. We all rise and begin the meeting with the prayer. Dear God, today as the session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. We all please salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Samaras.
Here.
Councilor Belanger.
Here.
Mayor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy.
Here.
Councilor Leahy.
Here.
Councilor Martin. Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Milonazo.
Here.
Councilor Rourke.
Here.
That's 8 present.
Present. Before we begin the regularly scheduled agenda, I'd like to take an opportunity. We have several residents who have passed away in the last week, and if there's no objection, I'd like to read them all. With memorials for tonight. The first is James Robert Bob Azier. Bob was a Lowell resident and former English teacher. Bob was a well-known employee for the Olympia restaurant for over 25 years. We also have Florence N. Simon Beatty, Lowell resident and sister of Fred Simon. Stephen L. Jarvis, well-known Greater Lowell businessman, Lowell resident. Gregory J. Murphy, longtime Lowell resident and brother of city manager Kevin Murphy. Mary A. Caulfield Rico, longtime Lowell resident. She's a sister of former Mayor Edward Bud Caulfield. And Francis A. Zabo, former Lowell High School teacher, Greater Lowell realtor, cousin of City Councilor Edward Kennedy, who grew up longtime resident of the Highland section of the city. Could we all please rise for a moment of silence and darken chambers for all of these residents. May they all rest in peace. Moving on to the first item on the agenda, we have minutes from the City Council meeting of January 13th. We have minutes from the Technology and Utility Subcommittee of January 13th. Motion to accept these minutes and place on file by Councilor Belanger, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. The minutes are accepted and placed on file. Next section of the agenda, we have communications from the city manager. We have motion responses, A through C. Questions on motion responses? Councilor Samaras?
Thank you. I just want to thank the city manager for these reports. The motion response regarding the redeveloped land at the corner of Market and Cabot and Merrimack Street. What I'm pleased about your report is that you talked about the city administration and major stakeholders that participated in a bus tour to understand the needs of the area, and that you plan future meetings. That the Department of Planning has had open discussions of existing conditions and proposed development for Upper Merrimack Street to ensure that neighbors and business people will understand the planning. And finally, that more planning is anticipated to determine the neighborhood needs and the vision for the area. I really feel that this area has the potential to be developed into one of the best economic areas in the city. Its potential between the university and what the city has planned is tremendous. But I like the fact that the city administration is ensuring that the neighborhoods, the neighbors, the people who live there will understand what's going on and the many businesses that are there will understand what's going on. I think it creates a level playing field for everybody, and I think this is a chance for us to ensure that something like what happened in Route 38, where this city council was mired into changing certain zonings and what have you, that would affect good people no matter what you did. And I think by planning, anticipating what the needs are of that area will help in the long run. So I want to commend the administration for this work so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Samaras. Further discussion on motion responses from the city manager? Seeing none, entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Council Kennedy, second by Council Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion passes. Next communication from the city manager is a memorandum of understanding with the Lowell Housing Authority. First reading. Dear Mayor Elliott, members of the City Council, I write to update the City Council as to a successor agreement reached with the LHA, Lowell Housing Authority. If you recall, in 2010, the city entered into an agreement with the LHA whereby an annual payment of $25,000 was made to cover permit fees for all work done in-house by the LHA. Pursuant to a new agreement, an annual payment of $40,000 will be paid by LHA to the city. These funds will be used to share in the cost of one full-time police officer's salary. The new agreement comes with a significant increase in fund and a cost-sharing arrangements by which both the city and the LHA will benefit. Mr. Manager?
Thank you. We previously had an agreement with the Lowell Housing Authority where they would pay a lump sum of $25,000 per year for any building permits that they needed to do for in-house work. What we've done is we've been able to negotiate an increase in that lump sum payment because they have a need for increased security, especially around the Ashenbo Towers and the North Common Village area. This dovetails with the discussion about that the property for Jeanne d'Arc at that intersection, because all of the stakeholders have told us about the need for a sense of safety in that neighborhood in order for it to grow. So we've convinced the Housing Authority to increase their payment to $40,000 per year. That's the cost, one-half cost of a police officer. They're also going to provide space for that police officer at Ashenbo Towers. So that police officer will be stationed right at Ashenbo Towers, will be able to patrol the area around Upper Merrimack Street, Upper Salem, and Market Street, and we will only be paying one-half the cost. I think it's a great arrangement, and the City Council has obviously made it imperative that we increase public safety, and I think this is another unique way of increasing public safety in the city with an additional police officer on the street.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Questions? Councilman Malinowski?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the city manager. This is a very good agreement, and I want to commend you and the Housing Authority for reaching this new $40,000 number. My question has to do with the Mercia Center and whether or not the police precinct will continue at the Mercia Center in light of what you just said about a police officer working out of Ashenbo Towers. Do you know if the police precinct will remain open at the Mercia
I believe
Center?
it will, but I will make sure I get that answer, and we'll let everybody know about that
Okay.
Mercia Center
Okay,
also.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Council Leahy?
I just wanted to say thank you to the manager. I thought that was good work when I read the report. So I just want to say nice job. That's everything that we've been asking, the increase in money, the extra police presence. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion? Motion to approve by Council Mercia, second by Council Malinowski. Roll call. Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? That motion carries. No roll call needed. Moving on to the next communication from the city manager. We have a reappointment of Nancy Pitkin, Selmira Mitchell, and Mary Ann Grease to the Pollard Memorial Library. Dear Mayor Elliott, members of the City Council, pursuant to the authority under the code, of the City of Lowell, Section 39-1. It is with pleasure I am reappointing the following to the Pollard Memorial Library Board of Trustees to a term which expires December 31st, 2018, or such time thereafter until a successor is appointed and qualified. Nancy Pitkin, 29 Waverly Ave, Selmeyer Mitchell, 34 Coburn Street, Mary Ann Grease, 525 Pawtucket Boulevard. Confirmation by the City Council is required for these appointments and is hereby requested. I would be happy to answer any inquiries you may have concerning these appointments. Very truly yours, Kevin Murphy, City Manager. Council Mercia?
Move approval.
Move approval by Council Mercia, second by Council Milonazo. All those in favor signify by, roll call.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy. Yes. Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Moving on to the next section of the agenda, we have votes from the city manager. First item is a vote for a license agreement for the parking at Early Garage between the city and Merrimack Valley Radio LLC. Entertain a motion to waive the full reading by Council Rourke, seconded by Council Samaras. All those in favor signify by saying aye. In the opposed, that motion carries. Second reading by title, Commonwealth of Massachusetts City of Lowell In-City Council is a vote authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with Merrimack Valley Radio LLC and its designees to use an unlimited access to and to use unlimited number of parking spaces in the city's Edward J. Early Garage located at 135 Middlesex Street, Lowell, through the use of city-issued pass cards. Mr. Manager?
Thank you. Apparently, there's been an arrangement between WCAP and the city since 2008. I discovered it by chance. There was nothing in writing, and quite honestly, it wasn't being monitored to the degree that I thought it should be monitored. So I think it was a good arrangement. However, I felt that it needed to be in writing, and it needed to be monitored better than it was being monitored. Basically, what the arrangement will be is that we will allow WCAP to park in the Early Garage. They will receive parking passes at the same rate that other residents receive them pursuant to the ordinance. If they park on an hourly basis, it will be the same hourly rates as charged anybody else that parks at the garage. So there's no decreased rates for the CAP. They're the rates that everybody else has to pay in the city of Lowell. And in return, they will give us 150% of their use in advertising credits on WCAP. The council, has made it clear to me also that, we want to continue to promote the city and find unique ways to promote the city. So in this manner, I thought this was a unique way to increase revenue for advertising in the city. So let me give you an example. If they use $200 in parking, then they're going to give us $300 in advertising credits on WCAP. Now, of that $300 in advertising credits, we will select 2/3 of the times that those credits will be used for advertising, and WCAP will assign the other third to the times for advertising. So we have control over, we don't want the ads at 2 o'clock in the morning. We want them at, prime time, drive time, so people can hear it. It's, from going to focus groups and from listening to people, I think our advertising wants to be geared to the greater Lowell area. For us, festivals, the Winterfest and everything, we're more likely to attract somebody from the greater Lowell area. So advertising on WCAP would be a good way of attracting greater Lowell residents. So basically what it is, it's an agreement that's been in existence since 2008, but we reduced it to writing. It can be terminated on 30 days' notice if we decide we want to. It's at the same parking rates that anybody else will pay in the city, and we actually get increased advertising as a result of it. So I think it's a great opportunity for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Council Belanger, then Council Mercia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I reviewed the contract, and I think this is a very
beneficial arrangement for the city, Mr. Manager. Great job, and I should say discovering it rather than creating it, but nonetheless, it's something I think it's going to work very positive for us. This council, as a group, has campaigned more often than not about advertising the city, and here we go with a radio station that expands throughout the Merrimack Valley. It will be no out-of-pocket money. It's literally an exchange of services, and so we should capitalize on it. We're getting an extra 150%, well, 50%, if you will, on top of what we're giving them. So it's a win-win. So great job, Mr. Manager. I'm in support of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Marcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, there's no doubt about the fact that we have to promote the city, and this is a good deal on the surface to give, to pay $200, and we're getting 150%, which they'll give us $300. But my concern is a little bit deeper than that, and I don't oppose it, but I'm concerned about it. Are we paying street rate, or are we paying as opposed to rate card rate? In other words, are we paying, is it equivalent to $10 a minute or $60 a minute? Because if it's $60 a minute, that $300 is going to go like this. We'll have to be talking as quick as can be, or else we're not going to do any advertising. So I'm wondering if you could break that down to what rate per minute are we talking about? Is it $10 a minute, which is street rate, or rate card rate, which is $60 a minute? To me, that matters, because, I mean, they can give me 150%, but if they're going to charge me $60 a minute, so...
But, Mr. Manager?
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you're asking about the WCAP rate, correct?
I want to know what rate are we getting per minute?
It'll be the lower rate that we're going to be
The
getting.
lower
Yeah.
rate.
Because we've been advertising and it's been at the lower rate.
That's all I want to know. What rate is that? So if that's the lower rate, that's fine.
Yep.
I'll say Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the city manager. You mentioned that this agreement has been, or this situation has been out there since 2008, where they're using parking spaces. Do we know how many parking spaces they currently use before this contract gets signed? How many pass cards, I guess, are issued right now?
I know that the, Jim, if you could come up here.
Mr. Troop?
Mr. Troop, how many pass cards are issued to WCAP?
Currently use 14. It's
14.
pretty much been consistent throughout any of the times we've kept the records.
Okay.
And if I could just add, through
Mr.
you,
Manager?
Mr. Mayor, is that we've looked at the revenue in the past year. They've averaged about $8,000 per year in parking, so that equates to $12,000 in advertising credits, which I think is a pretty good
Great.
ratio for us.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Further questions, discussion? Motion to approve by Councilor O'Rourke, second by Councilor Samaras. Roll call.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry, Councilor Marcia?
I think it could have been a little bit deeper so that rate per minute could have been put in this contract. You know,
Why don't we, we'll add the rate to the contract.
because I really would like to see that in writing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Madam Solicitor, is that something we should amend prior to the vote, or can that be included in the agreement later on? It can be included? Okay.
Sorry.
Further questions? Councilor Kennedy?
Why aren't we amending it to make sure that it's included in the agreement? Why would we not do that?
Madam Solicitor?
It will be added to the agreement. I was just stating that you don't need, we wouldn't need a formal motion in order to make that change. We'll make the change and add it to the agreement.
Okay.
The agreements aren't the vote before the council, so they're just the supplemental material that you have before you, and we're free to make changes to that.
Okay. Roll call.
Council Samaras.
Yes?
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Okay, 9 yeas. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have orders from the city manager. We have a loan order for garage repair bonds of $6.640,000 to the Lowell Garage, Leo Garages. First reading, I'll entertain a motion to refer this to a public hearing on February 17th by, the 24th. February 24th by Council Samaras, seconded by Council Belanger. On this motion, Mr. Manager?
Basically, I know that there was a presentation made to the city council probably about a year ago relative to the need for repairs to the two garages and the ability of the parking enterprise fund to pay for the capital repairs. I thought it might be advantageous if we referred this again to the Finance Subcommittee to make the presentation again, just to refresh the memories and have the subcommittee ask any questions that they may have relative to the proposal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Council Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based on the city manager's recommendation, I would move that this be referred to the City Council Subcommittee on Finance.
Motion by Council Kennedy, seconded by Council Leahy to refer this loan order for the garage repair bonds of $6.64 million to Lowell Locks and Leo Garages. Seconded by Council Leahy. All those in favor of that motion, Council Martin.
So, just to clarify, we still sending it to the public hearing on the 24th. That leave enough time for the Finance Committee to meet, either that earlier that night or before that.
Makes sense.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so
I
we're
think-
approved.
Yeah, just as an understanding that we'll keep it on for the 24th unless it's a will.
All right.
That there's not enough time, but I think there
right.
there is.
So we're approving both motions.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
So that's a good point. Motion to amend the original order from the manager to send it to a public hearing and to the Finance Subcommittee at the same time by Council Kennedy, seconded by Council Leahy. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion passes. We'll set up that Finance Subcommittee meeting. There's another item that Council Milanazzo referred as well, so try to put that on for the next week or so. Still under orders from the city manager, we have a second order of taking and acceptance of Decatur Avenue. Motion to refer this to a public hearing on February 3rd by Council Martin, seconded by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries as well. We'll schedule that for public hearing at 7 o'clock on the 3rd. Moving on to the next section, we have constable bonds. We have a communication from the city manager for approval of constable bond for Luis Perez. Motion to approve by Council Milanazzo, second by Council O'Rourke. Discussion. Roll call.
Council Samaras.
Yes?
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milanazzo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
9 yeas, that motion passes. We have reports from subcommittees. We had a Public Safety Subcommittee this evening. Chairman Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we did have a subcommittee along with my committee members. We also had Councilor Samaras, Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Leahy, and City Manager Murphy. From the Lowell Police Department, we had Superintendent Bill Taylor, Deputy Deborah Friedel, Deputy Arthur Ryan, and Mary Ann Bellotta. Tonight there were two items on the agenda for discussion. The first was the matrix study. The matrix study began back in 2008 and was ordered to make better use of taxpayer money. The most significant part of the document is the complete review of the policies and procedures of the Lowell Police Department. In 2008, the problem was the dissemination of the policies and procedures of the department. Superintendent Taylor stated that a more effective modern way to disseminate those policies and procedures has been put into effect. As of now, 78 of the 105 procedures have been completed, with a total completion to be expected by this spring. All the highest levels of policies and procedures have been updated. that have been reviewed and they have been disseminated to the police department. Items such as police chases, the use of force, prisoner management, and booking policies have been reviewed, implemented, and updated and given to the entire staff. Officers sign off on each and every policy and procedure individually to ensure that the staff has reviewed each item. The goal of the Lowell Police Department is to have state accreditation within 1 to 2 years after all policies and procedures have been put in place, updated, and given out to staff. The second part of the meeting tonight had to do with the discussion of Neighborhood Crime Watch. At that point in time, once again, Chief Taylor advocated for outreach to the community. He also stated the terrific collaboration that the police department has with the neighborhood groups, the use of various social media apps that are effective for community involvement. And once again, he also spoke about the See Something, Say Something campaign that the police department and the city has been advocating for some time, and will once again be aggressive in their use going forward for the next calendar year. Manager Murphy stated at the subcommittee meeting that since the fiscal year has started, 9 additional officers have been put in place, which is welcome news to ensure the subcommittee and to the city council. The ultimate goal, Superintendent Taylor did state, is to have as many officers on the street as possible. Council Mercier during that meeting advocated for more interaction between the police and its residents through the Boys and Girls Club, through parks, ball games, and community involvement. With that being said, Mr. Mayor, the meeting was adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further comments, questions on the report of the chairman of the subcommittee? Seeing none, entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress and placed on file by Councilor Samaras, seconded by Councilor Belanger. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. The report is accepted and placed on file.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Milonato.
Under reports on the subcommittees, if I could just inform my colleagues that we'll be having a transportation subcommittee meeting next Tuesday on the 27th at 5:30 here in the council chambers to discuss the improvements around the Lord overpass.
Okay, thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Councilor Samaras.
Mr. Mayor, I also want to announce that the Subcommittee on Youth Services will meet next week at 5 o'clock for a short meeting to talk about homeless students, homeless children.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next week, 5 p.m., Youth Services Subcommittee. Thank you, Councilor. Further scheduled subcommittee meetings, reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to next section of the agenda. We have petitions, we have claims. We have 2 property claims. We have 1 personal injury claim. Motion to refer to the Law Department for a report and recommendation by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Claims are sent to the Law Department. Moving on to City Council motions for the evening. The first motion of the evening is by Councilor Martin. Request City Manager have Police Department develop procedures for use of sirens when responding to calls. Second by Councilor Mercier. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had filed a motion a few weeks ago requesting a report about what the protocols were for response and what the accident history had been. We had a claim back in December that someone in a collision with a police cruiser, at least the claim asserted that the sirens weren't in use at the time of the accident. That was at least the second incident that I had heard about, although they're, a couple years apart. So I thought so I asked for a report about how many incidents, and it said there had only been 2 or 3 in a few years span of time, but into what the policies were. And the report basically said there were no policies, that it's up to the discretion of the individual officer, which I found to be a little bit surprising, given, the extensive training and preparation and everything else we do with police officers, and then to just say, well, whatever you feel like putting on the siren, just flip it on. So if there are no policies, I think there should be, at least there should be guidelines as to when it's appropriate to use the sirens and when it's appropriate not to use them. So I was surprised to get the report back saying there weren't any such procedures, so I think there should be, and that's the reason for the follow-up motion, is that the police develop protocols as to what's appropriate to use sirens when responding to calls.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? That motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Councilor Kennedy. Request the City Council Educational Partnership Subcommittee and the Lowell School Committee, Lowell High School Subcommittee meet to discuss the process, timeline, and feasibility of a new high school building project. Seconded by Councilor Milonazo. Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason for this motion is that as the process goes forward regarding the new high school, it seems to me that it would be prudent for the city council to stay abreast of what's going on all of the way. I understand that it's going to be a multi-year process, but the issue of a feasibility study could come up maybe this year. And if we are going to entertain a new high school, the cost of that feasibility study could be as high as $1.5 million, which is a significant amount of money, I think, for a feasibility study. And it also means, I think, if the city council is going to commit to that kind of money for a feasibility study, that's almost reaching the point of no return. In other words, you're kind of in at that point, it seems to me. And maybe if we were looking at a smaller project for the high school, maybe that feasibility study wouldn't be, need to be as expensive. At any rate, no matter what happens, I think that rather than to have it be that the city council is asked to vote on an amount of money or a loan order at the tail end of the process, that the city council should be involved in the process all the way along. Now, you know, I think that it should be a joint subcommittee, and what I chose was the City Council Subcommittee on Educational Partnerships, for the most part because it seemed to be most appropriate, but also because the chairman of that subcommittee is Councilor Samaras. And probably of all of us, he's probably knows more about the high school than anybody else. So to me, he seemed to be a natural to be on any subcommittee that had to do with this issue. I think that the school committee tomorrow night has one or maybe even two motions on doing kind of the same thing. And I also understand, although I didn't remember this, but I guess according to the city clerk and Councilor Rourke informed me that there was a ad hoc subcommittee that was formed by you, I think, last January, that hasn't met yet. And even this subcommittee won't meet right away because I think it'll probably be a couple of months before a meeting is warranted. But I do think that once that meeting is warranted, that this subcommittee will have to meet on an ongoing basis, probably over the span of a couple of years. And so maybe it makes more sense, rather than to have an ad hoc committee, which would expire, say, at the end of the council term, to have a standing committee. And so I guess the motion is as it stands, but Mr. Mayor, if you wanted to take the lead on it and create a standing committee that was going to deal with this issue, that would be okay with me. I just think that it's something that we should stay on top of, and that there should be a lot of discussion going forward. This is going to be, if we go forward with this project, it's going to be a very, very expensive endeavor.
Thank you, Councilor. I do believe that an ad hoc subcommittee was set up, and the only meeting that we had tentatively scheduled turned into be a committee of the whole by both subcommittees, because if you recall, it was a vote to, a number of votes taken in order to proceed to submit the application. So I'm happy to do whatever the council wants to set up a subcommittee, but I do agree. I think moving forward, staying on top of this issue as we move closer, now that we're starting to get reports from MSB, is important. So, Councilor Mercier and then Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an excellent motion, and I think the two proper subcommittees are in place. Education, dealing with what the needs are, the feasibility study, and the Lowell High School subcommittee as well. I believe that there's a fact sheet out there anyway that we didn't have the opportunity to see. You have the proper people in place, the headmaster, and you have Councilor Samaras. So I think this is the best of of both committees, and it'll keep us all on the same page. I think this is a good motion and good subcommittees in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Maldonado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is a good motion. I think the intent of the motion is on target to make sure that we, as a city council and as a school committee, discuss this project going forward. However, I'm not sure that the high school subcommittee is the correct subcommittee, and I will defer it to you, Mayor Elliott, to talk to your colleagues tomorrow night about what subcommittee it should go to, because I really think it's up to the school committee to decide what subcommittee. I know the facility subcommittee has been meeting on this issue for some time, so I think Councilor Kennedy, in collaboration with you, Mayor Elliott, discussing the idea of setting up an ad hoc or standing subcommittee makes sense. And again, I'd support the motion with that intent, that tomorrow evening you talk to your colleagues about going in that direction, because I'm not sure that the high school subcommittee is the right subcommittee, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. We will consult tomorrow night and come up with a recommendation. Councilor Belanger?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm also in support of the motion. I think it's very good for informational purposes. I mean, let's face it, this is going to be the largest purchase in the city's history, to my knowledge. I've only been here a year, but I don't recall anything bigger than the price tag that this new high school is going to carry. But back to Councilor Kennedy's description of it could be as high, the feasibility study could be as high as 1.5 million, but I was under the understanding that that gets reimbursed. So, Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager, am I accurate on that assessment?
That's what I've been told, but we're still going to verify that it is reimbursed 100%.
Okay, is that at time of completion? At what, do you know the time?
That's what we're looking
Okay, so that comes back, in a sense. Okay, so I think that's important to know for my colleagues and the folks at home that, yes, it's going to be expensive, but we need to look at every fact and every angle as this comes in, what's the best thing for the students of the city and the city of Lowell. So I do support it. I think it's a good motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. Through you to the manager. So I like the motion, and just to follow along, when did they do the feasibility study after they tell you they're giving you the green light?
Yes, the city hasn't got the green light yet. We have to respect the process. There's going to be a meeting in March. Things look positive, but there's never a final answer until March. If we are invited to continue on, then we will have to engage that feasibility study relative to what should be done. Should there be a new high school? Should there be a renovation of the existing structure? What's in the best interest? And that's what the feasibility study will do.
Okay, and with your experience in the legislature, does that sound about right, what you
Yes.
pay for those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and does
Yeah.
that take about a year then for that much money? or do
Probably,
they-
yeah.
Okay.
And they dictate who does the feasibility. We don't pick the person.
Oh, all right.
So,
And then you definitely proceed with something afterwards, right, though? You wouldn't do a feasibility and then never,
right.
the only reason why we would never build it is if the council didn't vote for the money.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Further discussion on this item? No? Okay, we'll put something together. If you could look into that, Mr. Manager, because I think motion, I think point well taken. Once we commit to this feasibility study, it's difficult, and I'm not quite sure that's reimbursable. So it's a lot of money for a feasibility study. But that's the process. You have to proceed once you're selected to at least be considered. I think also would be important, Mr. Manager, is the city's obligation on this 20%, and I believe it's close to 50 million. We have to. That's the city's. That would be the city's share, and we have to look at our debt schedule to see what we're retiring. Is that correct, Mr. Manager?
Well, the reimbursement is about 78%. So we would be responsible for 22% of the cost. And if you took the projected cost of building a new high school, you're talking about approximately $55 million share for the city to do that.
Thank you, Mr.
But I will look into the reimbursement of the 1.5 projected feasibility study.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion passes. Next motion, last motion of the evening by Council Belanger. Request city manager enforce current parking regulations according to the ordinance and investigate the possibility of an overnight parking ban. Seconded by Councilor Samaras. Councilor Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, this motion stems from, you know, this past year, this council has worked very, very hard and has had a lot of focus on our downtown. You know, I'm there every day, day in and day out, as many of my colleagues are. We've all met with several businesses, and the number one feedback deterrent in our downtown is parking. It's no secret. It's a downtown. It's something many downtowns throughout the Commonwealth are struggling with at the same time. There's no two ways about it. You can go to a restaurant, a chain, there's parking right in front of the door. So it's the number one deterrent, again, for people to come downtown. They just fear coming down. They don't want to use garages, and very seldom you get a spot in front of your destination, what you're looking for. So what I'm looking to ask the manager to do is, we need turnover. Cars are sitting on the street for too long, nights and all weekends. So what I'd like to see is the ordinance enforced as basically what's read on the kiosks, okay? It says 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday. And we all know, and the folks down, whether it's residents and business owners, know that that's not the case, that meter maids are on at 8 a.m. but go home at 4 a.m. Monday to Friday. There's no enforcement on nights and no enforcement on weekends. Now, over the last 10 years, we've gone back and forth. Downtown is now a neighborhood. There's been to the tune, I believe, about 1,200 new units throughout the downtown. Okay, it's become a neighborhood. There are many residents in the downtown. Although there are many positives to that, don't get me wrong. But on the other end, residents, visitors, and friends are coming nights, weekends, they're staying on the street, and they're staying there all weekend. Okay, and this is the outcry that some of my colleagues are hearing from just about every downtown merchant, that there's nowhere to park. It's now Tuesday. By the time we get out, it'll be 7:30, 8 o'clock. You can go downtown. It's a Tuesday night. The establishments will be quiet. The shops will be closed, and you will find there's nowhere to park on the street. I can almost guarantee it. That is because as we evolved, become a neighborhood, everybody, residents, visitors, are on the street. And it's taking a heavy toll, okay? A heavy toll on merchants of all, I don't care what the nature of the business is, okay? It's really crippling, especially as of late. So what I'd like to see is to create this turnover that businesses so desperately need. We need to enforce the ordinance as read. We need to include Saturdays, because that's the big, weekends are the big shopping days, or what should be the big shopping days, and merchants aren't seeing it. I've talked to just about every one of them, along with my colleagues. They're all saying the same thing. They see cars circle and circle, and then they don't see them at all. Okay, so this, I think, is an absolute must. It needs to get done. All the merchants have spoken. I think this will go a long way in helping all of the businesses in the downtown. Now, along with that, there was talk on the subcommittees of also a parking ban in the downtown overnight. Now, we have a combination. We have businesses of all different demographics. Some are day-oriented, some are night. Now, what I think should be done here is approximately after the late establishments close, if you will, 2 or 3 in the morning, the parking ban should begin roughly 3 a.m. in the morning, where all cars should be off the street. That will make residents go in the garage, employees go in the garage, and create a new culture, okay, instead of just going on the street. And in some cases, businesses are hurting themselves. People park in front of their own. And in some cases, not all the residents. I'm not trying to target residents. On the city council, we represent everybody downtown, including the residents. But this is what we need to change in the downtown. The perception that there is no parking when there is. There very much is. We have garages on every block just about that are empty, that no one seems to want to use. So we need to get as many cars off the street as we can into garages. And I think that will help immensely. Now, there's, I believe, another plus side to a parking ban, if it's instated, that snow removal will be much easier in the wintertime. When it's automatic, you can count on being nobody on the street at 3 a.m., snow removal becomes much, much easier. We all know the complaints this council got last year. The winter we had, knock on wood, it's been a fairly mild winter. But last year, we had a lot of problems. That would help alleviate that. Then comes the summertime. Cleanliness. We often hear complaints, so the streets need to be cleaned. The gutters and curbs are very dirty. We hear that a lot. That will help in that. We could perhaps stay on that measure as well. So I think there's an additional bonus to doing this, as well as helping merchants. It will help cleanliness and snow removal at the same time. So I ask my colleagues to please consider this. The merchants have spoken time and time again that this is what needs to get done. And I know the parking ordinance, we can almost start enforcing right away, but I think we need to craft, if it is an overnight ban, that will have to go to the law department and come back to the council. But I have begun outreach to neighborhood groups. This is going to be on the floor tonight, and I'm meeting with the Downtown Association. Next Monday night, I tried to outreach to the businesses and residents to the best I can, and even most residents that I've talked to have not been all that many, but they're all in agreement with this, that, businesses are getting hurt because they're seeing it. They're seeing it too. So even not all, but some of the residents I talked to are in support of this at the same time. So I think this needs to get done if we're going to change this culture, this perception, that the stigma that the downtown has that there's no parking when there's plenty of parking. It's a perception. It's not a problem, and I can't state that enough. So I ask my colleagues to please consider this. The merchants solely need it. They need it desperately. And so I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor, and hear the input from my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. I wonder if we could, after we hear the discussion, but I'd like to maybe send this to subcommittee so we could get, what the cost is gonna be. If we have to hire a new, who we have to hire, if it needs negotiation through the union, if you wanna do split shifts or whatever the implications would be, because, if we vote for this tonight, we'd be saying that it needs to be done now, whether, without knowing what the costs are, so, if there's no objection, I'd like to send it to whatever the appropriate subcommittee is to, get a report from the manager and discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to speak to the overnight parking ban part of the motion. This has been taken up by the subcommittee in the past. I think that Council Leahy's suggestion to send it to a subcommittee would be a good one. I think sending it to a subcommittee is always a good idea. But I think in this instance, it might make sense to send just that overnight parking component to the parking department or the city manager for a report and recommendation just on that. I think that the overnight the problem, it seems to be, what the subcommittee has heard, is that a lot of people that live downtown have in their lease or included in their condominium fee a parking space in one of the garages downtown. But on Fridays, they don't bother with that, and if they can find a place on the street, they'll park on the street and then leave their car there for sometimes the whole weekend until Monday. So they're tying up the spot, and even though they've got a spot in the garage. So it seems to me that an overnight parking ban would free up a lot of parking spaces downtown. It makes sense that it would probably improve the snow removal process. And there are other communities. Brookline comes to mind, and so does Nashua, New Hampshire. They don't allow overnight parking. But I also think it's worth pointing out that what we're talking about here is a ban on overnight parking just in the central business district, certainly not citywide or anyplace else. But it would be good, I think, if we could get a report on that from the administration and from the parking department on what the impact would be, and just and what could we anticipate if we were to move ahead with something like that.
Okay, so motion to send it to, was it the Economic Development Subcommittee that has heard discussion on parking? Is that correct? That makes sense? Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I believe it's, I think Councilor Belanger chairs the subcommittee, so I'm not sure if it's on downtown or economic, I don't think it's economic development, maybe it is economic development, but Councilor Leahy's idea is a good one too, but I really think we need those reports, and that the subcommittee needs those reports in order to make a recommendation on doing anything regarding an overnight parking ban, because it is it's somewhat of a drastic move, I think.
Yep.
It's something that the people in the city and certainly the people downtown aren't used to.
okay. We got Council Rourke, then Council Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not to sound repetitive, but I think at the last Economic Subcommittee, we did have, this was talked about for a long time. And I actually think it was Council Milanazo's suggestion at that meeting that the administration start with the idea of getting word out that starting in January, the ordinance as written would be put into effect. I know not towards the end of January now, and I believe that Mr. Troop was there at that meeting, and the staff is in place if the council so wishes to use the ordinance as is. So, Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager, if the council asks you to start enforcing the ordinance tomorrow or next week, can that be done?
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Yes, it could be. We have the capability. We have the split shifts that have been negotiated, and we could do the Saturday enforcement on overtime, which would be more than paid for by the amount generated by the enforcement. So we could begin this tomorrow. We have the capabilities to do it from 8 till 6 and on the weekends.
Thank you. So, I agree with Councilor Kennedy and Councilor Leahy with sending the overnight parking idea to a subcommittee. I think it deserves more discussion. But as far as the way the ordinance is written, I believe this all started months ago when the position of a 10 to 6 parking attendant was put on the agenda. So, I can't see a reason why we wouldn't enact the ordinance as is now. I mean, if there is a reason, I'm willing to listen to it. But if we had a vote on it tonight, I'd say we vote to start the ordinance as is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Council Martin?
Thank you. It was the Economic Development Subcommittee that met on this. And Councilor Rourke's correct. We had this discussion about first of the year. But there were two members of the public that spoke, at least at the last meeting, one business owner and one resident. And I think the one thing they agreed on was that the city should enforce the 2-hour rule, especially on Saturdays. That they seem to think there would be a lot of benefit from that, because merchants, it prevents the whole overnight thing from Friday to Monday morning. If you're enforcing 2 hours on Saturday, it turns over the spaces on Saturday, at least during the day. And so it was, and maybe an interim step between an overnight ban. I think we already have overnight ban if there's a snow emergency, or at least certain. So anyway, I'm happy to have it go to a subcommittee. I do think, the administration should weigh in and see what's, what you think's going to work, what we have the ability to do right away, what's going to take longer term ordinance changes. But I think it's clear that we need to do something here, and whether it, as Councilor Kenny said, overnight ban is probably a drastic measure, but we have businesses and residents at least agreeing on something that may not be as drastic and maybe easier to enforce. It might be harder to enforce, I don't know, but I think that's something we need to have the administration, the parking department weigh in on.
Thank you. Council Belanger, then Council Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to finish up. For starters, I would like to thank my colleagues for their open-mindedness and their support in this measure, because they see it too. They're downtown all day. They know it as well as I, and we're all equally committed to helping the downtown merchants. I know that. But this, after several studies, Jim Troop and I, the parking director, have had several meetings on this, and it may seem like a drastic measure, and it is. But this is what similar cities and towns are doing throughout the Commonwealth. This is what it's come down to, because many gateway cities and old mill cities, mills have converted to residential, just like us. And many of them done this a long time ago. So I know it seems drastic here, but it's done in many cities and towns similar to Lowell throughout the Commonwealth. So I just want to make that aware, and that also that, most of these residents that are downtown bought in having one deeded, well, not deeded, but a parking spot in a garage and already pretty much pay for it and have it. But it doesn't do much more than sit on their visor in their automobile. I mean, if they come home at work, there's a spot in front of their condo, what do you think they're going to? Of course, they're going to park in front, and this is what they're doing. And it's taking a heavy toll again. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be repetitive, but but what I don't want to do is blindside residents at the same time. We represent them. I don't want to sneak this in the middle of the night and saying, Monday morning, we're enforcing. I do, although I want approval, yes, but I also want a time frame that we can have outreach, meet with the neighborhood groups and residents, and let them know it's coming on such and such a date if it does get approved. I don't want to sneak this in the middle of the night. That's not how I want to go about this, because they are residents of the city and they deserve better. This is how, my final thoughts. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
So is the thought to substitute the motion to send the entire current parking ordinance as well as the possibility of an overnight ban to the refer to the city manager as well as the Economic Development Subcommittee, Councilor Kennedy?
Yes, I think that's is that the motion that's before us?
Well, there's
I would offer an amendment that made the motion read that way if I could.
Okay, substitute motion by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Leahy, that we refer both the current ordinance as it exists to discuss implementation as well as have the manager look into an overnight parking ban and provide a report to the Economic Development Subcommittee. On the motion, Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could, maybe I shouldn't have used drastic. It certainly didn't mean, I happen to think that the overnight parking ban by itself might solve the situation and that all we really need to do is the overnight parking ban. So at this point, unless the report comes in otherwise, I would support an overnight parking ban. I think it's a good thing, and I think it would free up a lot of the spaces for the weekend without doing anything else.
Thank you. Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. So I kind of forgot that we had already covered the first part, so if we're all set up to do that, then that's fine. The only thing I just want to add with the overnight parking then, if, I know we are working on the lighting, so if we do initiate an overnight parking ban, I just want to make sure that residents feel safe going to the garages, because I know there's some lights out on Page Street and maybe Market Street. We're trying to brighten that up. So we should just be aware that wherever the garages are, that we are working on the lighting situation to make it brighter and so people feel more secure using the garages.
Great. Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries. That concludes the agenda for this evening. Councilor Kennedy? Motion to adjourn by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries. This meeting stands adjourned.